For 2 days, the stranger who was once Muyang lived as a ghost in his own city. He moved through the grimiest parts of the outer districts, sleeping in derelict buildings and surviving on cheap, stale bread purchased with the last of his aurum. This period of anonymity was not one of suffering, it was a crucial step in his plan. He was shedding the last vestiges of his old self, acclimating to a life where he was truly invisible. His imperceptible talent worked flawlessly, rendering him a forgettable face in any crowd, a phantom that no one registered. During this time, he practiced. He would find secluded, abandoned alleyways and activate perfect persona repeatedly. Each activation was a learning process. He discovered that while Level 1 allowed for significant changes, it had its limits. He couldn't drastically alter his height or mass, but he could shift his features, change his hair and eye color with mana, and most importantly, subtly alter the feel of his own mana signature, the unique energy every awakened person emits. He meticulously constructed his new identity. He didn't want a handsome hero or a striking figure. He wanted the opposite. He wanted someone who was the epitome of average, someone completely and utterly forgettable. He settled on a final design, a young man who looked about 19, a year older than Muyang. His face would be plain, with soft features that held no strong character. His hair, a common shade of brown. His eyes, a simple, unremarkable dark gray. His posture would be slightly slouched, not out of weakness, but out of a lack of presence. He would be the kind of person you could stand next to in a line and forget was even there the moment you turned away. He needed a name, not a name of hope or meaning like Muyang. He needed a name as plain as the face he was designing. He settled on Jin Park. It was common, simple, and carried no baggage. On the third day after Muyang's death, Jin Park was born. His first objective was to transform his new identity from a mere disguise into a legal reality. A physical persona was useless without the paperwork to back it up. He needed to be in the system. His target was a low-level civic services office on the border of the central and outer districts, a place perpetually understaffed and overwhelmed with paperwork from the city's teeming masses. He spent a full day observing it from a nearby cafe, watching the flow of people and the tired, overworked administrators behind the counters. His imperceptible talent allowed him to do this without drawing a single glance. He identified his mark, a middle-aged administrator with tired eyes, a perpetually stressed expression, and a habit of nervously checking the time on a cheap digital watch. Muyang, using his new persona, followed the man after his shift. The administrator didn't go home. He went to a dimly lit bar known for its illegal backroom gambling dens. Muyang had found his lever. The next day, Jin Park entered the Civic Services office during the chaotic lunch hour. He approached the administrator's counter, clutching a small, worn satchel. "Excuse me," Jin Park said. Jin Park said, his voice as nondescript as his face. "What do you want?" "Take a number," Mr. An replied, annoyed. I'm sorry to bother you. My situation is a bit complicated. I'm an orphan from the Outer 7 district. Our orphanage was shut down after a minor dungeon break years ago, and all our records were lost in the fire." Desperation in his voice. He presented a sheaf of papers, forgeries he had painstakingly created, filled with official-looking but ultimately meaningless text. "I've been trying to get my citizen ID reissued for months, but everyone keeps sending me somewhere else," Jin Park said, frustration clear. It was a sad but believable story. Such administrative black holes were common for the city's poor. "Tragic. Take a number. The process takes weeks," Mr. An said indifferently. "I understand," Jin Park replied, hopeful. Jin Park glanced at Mr. An's cheap watch, then back at his face. "But the academy entrance exams are in less than a month. I can't even apply without an ID. I was just hoping," Jin Park pleaded. He trailed off, then pushed his satchel slightly forward. Inside, nestled amongst his fake documents, was a small, heavy pouch. "I was hoping someone with your experience could expedite the process. For your trouble, of course. For taking time out of your busy schedule," the narrator said persuasively. Mr. An's eyes widened slightly as he caught a glimpse of the pouch. He looked around nervously. The office was a loud, chaotic mess. No one was paying attention to them. His gaze hardened. "Bribes are a serious offense, kid," Mr. An said sternly. "Of course not, sir. It's not a bribe, it's a donation," a gesture of gratitude from a desperate citizen. I heard you had some bad luck at the tables at the Wandering Spirit last night. Sometimes a little good fortune can change everything, Jin Park replied smoothly. The administrator flinched as if he'd been struck. The color drained from his face. The mention of the specific gambling den, his bad luck, it meant this quiet, plain-faced boy knew about his debts. It was a threat, wrapped in the guise of a polite request. The system for reissuing lost records is complex, Mr. An whispered. Mr. An's demeanor changed instantly. He snatched the satchel, pulling it behind the counter. He began typing furiously at his terminal. But there are backdated registration slots for cases like yours. Name? Mr. An said conspiratorially. Jin Park, Mu Young replied, confident. Date of birth? Mr. An asked, businesslike. Mu Young gave a date that would make him 19. The camera shifts to show a close-up on Jin Park's thoughtful expression. As Mr. An typed, Jin Park felt a subtle shift in the world. He was no longer just a disguise. The system was accepting him. He was becoming real. All right, the registration is processing. It will be flagged for review, but I'll mark it as a priority administrative correction. Your temporary ID card will be ready for pickup in 3 days. He pushed the now empty satchel back across the counter. Now leave, and don't come back to my counter again, Mr. An said sternly. Thank you for your help, Mr. An, Jin Park replied, respectfully. He walked out of the office, his imperceptible talent causing the administrator to have already half forgotten the tales of his plain face. He had spent nearly all the aurum he had, the pittance from Old Man Zhang and some he'd saved before, on that donation. It was a worthy investment. He found a public terminal and pulled up the application page for the Unified Academy entrance examinations. Applicant, Jin Park. Chosen department, Culinary Arts Division. He clicked Submit. The application was accepted. The wolf had just officially applied to enter the sheepfold. 3 days later, Jin Park walked back into the Civic Services office. True to the administrator's word, a thin plastic card was waiting for him. It was his temporary citizen ID, complete with his new name and face. It was flimsy and marked with a provisional stamp, but it was official. It was the key to everything. With his identity solidified, the next phase of his plan began. The Zenith Academy's Culinary Arts exam wasn't just about theory. Its centerpiece was a practical test. Applicants were required to procure a primary ingredient from a list of designated monsters and prepare a dish under the watchful eyes of Academy instructors. He found a public information terminal and spent 2 aurum to access the exam guidelines. He scrolled through the list of acceptable ingredients for the Zenith Academy's regional test. Most were from F rank or E rank monsters. Creatures, his eyes settled on one option in particular: crimson-shelled sand beetle, E rank, found primarily in the sun-scorched ravine, E rank dungeon. The meat from its legs is tough, but if prepared correctly, has properties that can slightly enhance stamina. Its shell is notoriously difficult to crack without damaging the delicate meat inside. It was perfect. The difficulty wasn't just in killing the monster, but in harvesting the ingredient properly. It was a test of precision, a quality he possessed in abundance from his past life. More importantly, choosing a difficult ingredient would make his eventual success seem that much more impressive. The problem was, he was, on paper, a level 1 chef with abysmal physical stats. His chop skill wasn't going to do anything against an armored beetle-like monster the size of a large dog. He needed weapons. He needed skills. His 30-day cooldown on Divine Copy was still ticking down. He had over 3 weeks left. He couldn't afford to wait. This meant he had to rely on the most common and most expensive method of acquiring power: the market. Jin Park made his way to the Outer District's Hunter Market. It was a chaotic, sprawling bazaar that smelled of monster blood, cheap steel, and desperation. Awakeners hawked monster parts from makeshift stalls, while merchants in fortified shops sold weapons and skill books. He knew he couldn't afford a skill book. Even a normal-grade combat skill book could cost thousands of aurum. The rare-grade battle flow book that Kang Day probably had was worth $1 million. His life savings, even before the bribe, wouldn't have bought the book's cover. He needed something cheap, something functional, something that wouldn't draw attention. His imperceptible talent was a godsend here. He moved through the throng of burly, scarred hunters without a single glance, his plain face and slouched posture making him part of the background. He browsed the weapon shops, ignoring the flashy, enchanted swords and spears that cost a fortune. He ended up at a dusty, forgotten stall run by a wizened old man. The stall specialized in second-hand, non-magical equipment. "Looking for something, kid?" the old man grunted, not looking up from the knife he was sharpening. "A butcher's cleaver. Heavy, good steel, something that can get through tough monster hide," Jin Park said directly. The old man finally looked up, his gaze assessing. "Not for a hunter, then? For a cook?" he asked inquisitively. "Something like that," Jin Park replied vaguely. The old man rummaged under his counter and produced a heavy, thick-spined cleaver. It was old and stained, but the steel was high-quality carbon, and the edge was wickedly sharp. "This is a gnasher. Used to be popular with goblin butchers. Good for hacking through bone and sinew." 30 aurum, the old man said, informing him. It was more than half of what little money he had left. He paid without haggling. The heavy cleaver, wrapped in oiled cloth, felt solid and deadly in his hands. It wasn't a hero's weapon, but it was a tool for a specific, brutal job. Next, he needed a skill. Not a skill book, but a skill imprint. He walked to a section of the market where shady-looking individuals lingered in alleyways. This was the imprinter's nook, a place where desperate or opportunistic awakeners sold access to their most basic skills. It was a well-known, if unregulated, corner of the hunter economy. The fundamental rule of imprinting was that it was a crude, inefficient process. No matter how powerful the imprinter, only normal-grade skills could be transferred this way. Anything rarer required the refined magic of a skill book or a natural awakening. It was a system that made rare skills expensive and anything higher a treasure. He found a man leaning against a wall, a crude sign scrawled on a piece of cardboard at his feet. "Combat Basics. Cheap." "What do you have?" Jin Park asked, his voice low. The man, who had a nasty scar across one eye, looked him up and down. He was probably a mid-level hunter who had hit his growth ceiling, now making side money from the foundational skills he learned years ago. Jin Park needed the most basic skills imaginable, but they were exactly what he needed. The shady man explained that he had Power Strike for 10 aurum and Toughen Skin for 15 aurum, both normal grade and rock solid. Jin Park decided that he would take both. The man's good eye lit up with greed as he responded. The shady man demanded 25 aurum up front. Jin Park counted out the coins, which the man pocketed instantly with a sly smile. In a hurried tone, the shady man told Jin Park to meet him in the alley, quickly. They stepped into the shadows of a narrow alleyway. The atmosphere was tense and heavy. The shady man commanded Jin Park to touch his arm and focus his mana, warning that the resonance was weak, so he shouldn't screw it up. Jin Park placed his hand on the man's forearm and focused his will, reaching out with his mana. It was like trying. In the midst of the storm, he listens to a whisper, a faint hint of the divine copy within him. After moments of intense concentration, 2 faint lights appear in his mind. A voice informs him, "Skill resonance detected. Would you like to learn Power Strike, normal?" The voice continues, "Skill resonance detected. Would you like to learn Toughen Skin, normal?" He confirms both. Though the process feels like a pale shadow of his true talent, it succeeds. The new skills seem shallow and weak beside the mythical and legendary powers hidden within him, yet they are crucial tools for the tasks ahead. The voice announces, "Skill acquired Power Strike normal, level 1. Description and active skill. Gather mana into a single point to deliver a strike with slightly increased force." And then, skill acquired Toughen Skin normal. Description and active skill. Temporarily hardens the skin, providing minor resistance against physical attacks. He now had a weapon and 2 combat skills. He was no hero. He was no Crimson Lancer. He was a level 1 chef with a butcher's knife and 2 bottom-of-the-barrel skills bought in a back alley. It would have to be enough. He walked away from the market, leaving the noise and desperation behind. He headed towards the city limits, towards the cracked earth and the looming maw of the sun-scorched ravine. His funds were almost depleted. His identity was a fabrication. His life depended on his ability to kill a monster that, by all logic, should have been far beyond his ability to handle. Jin Park, the unremarkable culinary applicant, was going hunting.